In 1946, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists created a concept known as the Doomsday Clock. This basically is a metaphorical assessment made up of some of the best scientists in the world, including the Jason. So if you've ever seen the shields and the scientific agency behind the shield, well, Jason actually is literally upon which that side of shield's based upon. They are the elite of the elite. Worryingly, the funding for Jason's, who refuses to be basically in the grips of the military-industrial complex, has been cut. So God knows how long their contribution will contribute to this very, very valuable tool. The current moment, we sit as of January the 1st, which was actually before the invasion of the Russians by the Ukrainians, we sat at approximately 90 seconds to midnight. That is in comparison to the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1963, which sat at 2 minutes to midnight, as we are nearly at twice the risk. We have never been so close to the nuclear annihilation in our entire bloody existence. Now, this takes me to the issue of things like, well, we'll start off with the crisis in the Israel at the moment with Gaza. We see the peace movement in New Zealand, and we see the peace movement in London, bringing out people in the literally droves of hundreds and thousands to denounce Israel for their decision to actually invade Gaza in response to the October 10th massacre carried out by the Hamas. I'll get into both those things very shortly. But the point I'm trying to make is that whether it's the conflict in Israel and between Israel and Palestine, or the conflict between the Russians and NATO, the reality is that is not peace movement. You do not pick a side when you march for peace. It is peace for all, and there can only be peace for all if we are going to have peace. The people that in fact were dancing at the event on October 10th, and again, this is a glaring an outcome of actually how bad our media has become, and it is frighteningly so what's going on, and again, I'll get into that in a second. They were not marching, they were not dancing for the Palestinians, they were not dancing for the Israelis, they were dancing for peace, period. If anybody's actually paid any attention and not just watch the network news or what's in their social media vibes, you'll actually find that there's been massive marches and protests in Israel for quite some time, where it's just the average person in the street, the average Israeli, in fact, is sick of it. Where they're sick to the teeth of these old men, whether they're on the Palestinian side or the Israelis, constantly engaging in waves of wars, which ultimately, at the end of the day, they do very, very well. The people who are in charge of the Hamas, they get to live in villas, they get to be driven around in private cars and private limousines, and so does the military-industrial complex on the inside of Israel. Not that long ago, probably about 2 years ago, there was actually a wonderful documentary about the teenagers of the Pequah. That's the free running sport of Israel and Palestinian kids that will get together and they'll go running together for peace through these bombed out sites. And the interview was just made it very clear. These kids, this is not their conflict. They're over it. They don't want it. This is imposed upon them by, again, mean old men with nasty little minds and nasty little hearts who are determined to carry out an agenda, which, as I said, that status quo has done very, very well for them. The issue of the Hamas, since we are going to go into the situation, is that the Hamas is actually, and this is a fact, if you don't believe me, go and read Yusuf Bodansky, one of the greatest experts on Middle Eastern terrorism in the Middle East. Go read Anton Sphere, again, a very, very good level, high level academic. Go read Patrick Steele, Abdul Nadal's Gun for Hire, which doesn't deal specifically with Hamas, but deals with this issue of the fact that a lot of these terrorist groups are not terrorism. They are closer to being hired guns and mercenaries that don't really care where the money comes from. They just get the money and then they send out their pawns, and the people that manage to indoctrinate think that, oh, yes, they're doing it for Allah, they're doing it for Yahweh, they're doing it for the Christian, my God's better than your God. Bollocks. Okay, but in the case of the Hamas originally actually spawned or financed by the Shin Bet, and they use it as a means to cut the popular support of PLO during the Intifada, the second Intifada. If you ever turn around into the breakdown again of the collapse of the Bank of Credit Commercial International, you'll find that most of these terrorist organisations were actually largely being funded or grew out of the initial patronage of both the Israeli intelligence and the Western intelligence services. Again, this point was actually all brought home, documented without a shred of doubt during the corruption trials of Italy in 1990, where the terminology of basically creating sides on either side was highlighted by the what was known as the strategy of tension, the terminology used by by the industrialists to basically fund extremists on both the left wing and the right wing, so that they would be busily asking for more powers that could be given to the state, and all the while not really kind of noticing the fact that all the money went to the people who own the factories, and none of that money actually went to the middle class, and none of it went to actually, that is the middle class bourgeois, or actually at the end of the day went to the working class. Unfortunately, our modern actual youth don't read. They don't really are not educated in understanding that you're just not just good enough to collect information and pick a side, that you must actually read diligently, do your due diligence, and actually make sure that you are fully aware of, basically they lack sophistication. So again, in this wonderful world of social media, it's all about bubbles, it's all about tribes, and you're either with us or you're against us. Mostly, unfortunately, what's happening on social media is that the people that are anti-war and anti-corporate are actually being crushed, blown, knocked off the perch. That's my case. Prior to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, my traffic was about basically 135,000 people a month. It's now about 400. My actual paid subscribers are less than 100, and this is, and you say, oh yeah, well that's maybe because you haven't got anything important to say. Nobody really cares. Well, really? Because when I'm not on my IP and I make, say, for example, carrying out the Deadline Report care of Fresh FM, I'm their number one podcaster. Basically, we have over 300 to 400 basically people broadcast each week on Fresh FM, and I'm number one. And that's an audience of nearly 100,000 people. So given the opportunity, you bet your bottom dollar people want to hear what I have to say. Unfortunately, what we get instead is that we get people out there that supposedly are the evil alt-right or the evil left, and we'll go to the alt-right. They're not actually getting blocked. That's the myth. They're actually getting money's pouring into the chest. Basically, these people have been allowed to go out there and exploit themselves. They've been allowed to absolutely contaminate movements, make them a living bloody joke. Sue Gray, for example, the International Tribunal of Natural Justice, cannot go on about what an absolute despicable woman this is. How she drags in people without any asking anybody else. Oh, because Sue thinks that's okay. Not regardless of the fact that she's undermining the hard work done by very people way beforehand. And this is, of course, again, pretty much, what she's done in terms of, oh yes, she's done a few wins for the vaccines and anti-mandates, and then she goes and puts herself in bed with Brian Tamaki. And so that's from now on all the left. Anything, they're not interested in anything anybody wants to say about Big Pharma, because all they can see is big homophobic Brian Tamaki. Good one, Sue. You absolutely screwed us. But again, she won't have any problem getting money to go on holiday. She won't have any problem getting any numbers into her problem. The people that are actual fact are actually not of that kind of evil. The people that are actually doing their jobs properly are the ones that are actually being censored when it comes to the anti-corporation and the anti-war. And sadly, again, what we see happening here is that, oh no, big news, oh yeah, march on Palestine, and all the Labour groups, oh yeah, march, oh yeah, evil Palestine, but evil Israel, Palestine, take a side, pick a side, you're either with us or against us. Meanwhile, the nuclear clock goes tick, 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 boom!